everybody, how's it going? Today I'm going to give you a very rudimentary buyer's guide to AR-15 rifles. This is kind of a, well, not really like a follow-up to my buyer's guide to AK rifles. AR-15 rifles are extremely popular here in America, and there's lots and lots of parts for them, lots of different models. And I'm going to try and give you kind of a introductory, real basic idea of what to look for when you're looking for an AR-15 rifle. If you've seen a couple of models in your store, you've probably seen some gun magazines or know somebody who's got one, and now you want to go and you want to find yourself a rifle, and you're going to have to ask yourself, well, what do I want? What am I looking for? First question you're going to ask yourself is, well, in some cases, what's allowed? In some states, you're real limited on what you're allowed to have, like Massachusetts, California, and New Jersey. So that's the first place you need to go. If you know your state has some strict gun laws, go find out exactly what you're allowed to have, and see what and start from that point and go forward from there. Now, most of us don't have the old gun ban laws anymore, and we live in a slightly more free states of the United States, so we don't have this problem. But if you do live in some of those states, you best to go and check what's allowed to be legal in your state. Now, the weapons I will carry are legal for the state of Georgia, which it's a very gun-friendly state, so as far as I know, there aren't really any limitations on it. So this may or may not work for you, so keep that in mind, but I'm going to assume that your state is similar to mine, unless, like I said, it's California, New Jersey, Massachusetts, something like that. I'm kind of trying to find a place to start with here, so I may kind of jump around a little bit. I'll try and keep it some kind of order. I'm going to try to focus on the parts that are the most important first, and we'll go out from there. In generally speaking, the two rifles you see in front of you are basically the two most common versions you're going to run across in most gun shops. At the top is, up here, is my AR-15. It's based on an M16A2 design with the round handguards, the carry handle with the rear sight built into it. It's an updated version of the M16A1, which has a much simpler rear sight. It's pretty common, and below it is a 16-inch barrel. I'm sorry, the top AR-15 is a 20-inch barrel. Below it has a 16-inch barrel carbine, and basically, like I said, this is a rifle. This is considered the rifle. This is considered the carbine. They'll both do roughly the same job. It's just these are the two most common things you're going to find. And when you start looking at gun stores, and when you start maybe even building your own, is which one of these versions you want to go with. The top, as I said, is basically an AR-15 version of the M16A2. The bottom is a carbine version of the M16A4. The primary difference is going to be the M16 A4 style at the bottom doesn't have the carry handle, as you can see it in the video. It has, let me zoom in for you, it has a Picatinny rail, and attached to that is my aim point red dot, and the other rifle has the carry handle front sight. Now, you can get a mount to put an optic in the carry handle. That's not a problem. They're not very expensive, and the standard optic still works. With this one, you can also get a carry handle that will attach to the upper. So you can have it either way if you want, but generally these are the two kind of uppers you're going to find. The A4 style upper is usually quite a bit cheaper because it has a lot less parts to it. That will be in the parts. We'll discuss that a little more later, but that'll give you kind of an idea of maybe which one you want to start with. Now, there's target versions built. There's some with bull barrels and stuff like that. I'm going to assume you want more of an infantryman's rifle, and if I have time, I'll go into those other designs, but this is pretty much the majority of the two designs you're going to have. Speaking of which, like I said, the primary difference between these two is really the barrel length. There's a 20-inch barrel at the top and a 16-inch at the bottom. Now, there's 14-inch barrels, 10-inch barrels, but those are require special paperwork and really beyond the scope of this video. But the real heart of this weapon is going to be the barrel, and currently it's going to depend on the caliber you want, but we'll get into caliber details later. But basically, there's a list of characteristics you should look for. Now, this is kind of my opinion, but I'll try to back it up with as much fact as I can. There's different profiles of barrels. There's pencil barrels, there's heavy barrels, and there's government profile barrels. Government profile is generally what I go for. There's also a SOCOM or a bull barrel or a couple other things. It's basically it's a fairly thick barrel that still maintains to be light. It's just like the most approved. It's the one most people go for. There's other options that aren't necessarily bad, but generally, most of the rifles you'll see will have government profile barrels. If you want to build a really, really lightweight carbine, most people will go for the lightweight barrel. But consider that. I will do a whole separate video when it comes to barrel profiling. But these two both have government profile barrels on them. They tend to work really well. The next thing you're really going to have to look forward to is a chrome-lined chamber and bore. And if you don't know what the chamber and the bore is in this rifle, I'll go into a separate video when I take apart an AR-15. But it's basically the area with the bolt carrier inside of it. If you want it to be chrome-lined, or if you can get it chrome-lined and the bore chrome-lined, it's really more beneficial than negative. Some people say it gives it a slight decrease in the weapon's accuracy, but I'm thinking that's old information. And the way they chrome-line weapons now, it's much more efficient than when they first started. So the biggest advantage to getting a chrome-lined barrel is it's much easier to clean and it extends the life of the rifle. The two most common barrels are usually going to be the stainless steel rifle and the chrome moly rifle barrel, and they'll wear at a very slow rate. So, like I said, this is kind of opinion based as to what one goes. I'm trying to stick with something that's kind of absolute. I may cover that in a different video, but those are your two choices. You'll have to independently research which one you want. One thing that is important though is the twist rate in the rifles. 1 in 7 twist is the most common. This is going to go into a lot of ballistics, about how the penetrator bullets work, how the rifle twisting works, and just details like that. It may be boring to a lot of people, so I'll kind of go back over it in detail later in the video, but that's just one thing to take into consider is the twist rate to the barrel. 1 in 7 is usually the most common, but not always. One thing that I'm kind of hesitant to talk about is going to be the M4 feed ramps. Now, these are kind of hard to tell you about, so I'll have to show you. I was trying to add this into my video without having to point it at the monitor, but I'm not having much luck. I'm still using some fairly old software, so bear with me here. But basically, there's a lot of debate on whether the so-called M4 feed ramps or M4 feed ramp cuts are important. The idea comes from the fact that some people would say the weakest part of the AR-15 design is the magazine. That leads to a lot of problems, and a lot of magazines in the Army are very well worn out. And in order to compensate for the weak springs in the magazine, these cuts were made into the backside of the barrel and the feed ramp area to aid in feeding bullets into the weapon to compensate for weakened springs. As you can see, the one on the left here has standard cuts and the one on the right has the M4 cuts. It's easier to see if I zoom in for you. You can't really tell a whole lot of difference at the top, but it's standard and that's the M4. But you can see here the notches cut out for the M4 feed ramps. The standard one doesn't have it. And then it's slightly more obvious here, the M4 feed ramps. And here's a really good example of what good feed ramps should look like and what improper feed ramps should look like. Like I said, it's a matter of debate as to if you really need them or not. There's plenty of AR-15s that don't have them that run just fine, but I think it's a nice thing to have if you can get it. So that's really up to you. I think my guess would be if you shoot a lot of steel case dirty ammo, and you're not really that great at cleaning your rifle, well, you shouldn't be using an AR anyway if you got that problem, but if you are, definitely go with the feed ramps. Most rifles have them standard now, so it's not really an issue, but just take that into consideration. Another thing you're going to hear a lot about is magnetic particle inspection. Colt's made a big deal about this procedure, and it's mentioned in a lot of AR-15 parts. It's basically, it's when they take a piece of metal, and they put it between two jaws, and they electronically charge it with pulses, sorry about that, and a liquid solution is put into the particles, and basically it's a way to examine the object under black light and see if there's any imperfections or any small cracks. Check the characteristics of the steel and see if it's any good. It's really used to describe bolts that are magnetically particle inspected. I don't really think this is a big deal. I don't see what the biggest deal is. I haven't found any evidence that there's a huge improvement in MPI bolts over non-MPI bolts. So as far as that goes, it's something to read about. Like I said, I'm trying to make this real basic, but I'm trying to cover a lot of the information you're going to run across. I wouldn't really worry about it. I haven't found a lot of information on it that's going to make it real unnecessary. Something you should really look out for as far as buying AR-15 parts. Now the next thing coming up is slightly more important. Okay, the next thing I'm going to go over with you is the gas systems. Now this is a little more basic, it's a little easier to understand, and it actually has quite a bit of difference, quite a bit of importance, I mean. In the standard AR-15 style rifles, the gas system uses a direct impingement gas system. This is something kind of unique that Eugene Stoner designed. Basically, when you fire a round, there's an explosion, high pressure gas. The gas is fed through a hole in the barrel up here. Now this is the way most semi-automatics work, but from this point, things are a little different. In this style AR-15, the gas then travels directly up a small tube, aluminum tube, underneath the handguards. You can maybe kind of see it. There you go, right there. And goes into the rifle, into the chamber back here. I'll show you that. See if we can get you a good look in there. Hold on. You could probably just make it. See that tube right up here? That's where the gas comes in, and it blows the bolt carrier back. Blows in here, blows the bolt carrier back, and that's what cycles the rifle. Gas comes in, blows this back, it goes back inside the buffer tube, goes forward, picks up another round, and this is the most common way of cycling a rifle. Now the problem with that is, it's kind of what gave the early early M16s the myth of being unreliable. There can be problems with this if it's badly manufactured, which the early models were. It wasn't any fault to the design of the gun. It was the fault of the government who decided to micromanage everything, and kind of gave, or definitely gave, the early M16's problems. Is this chamber down here, a lot of debris gets in it. Now if you clean your rifle, you oil your rifle, you're going to be shooting a lot before you have any problems. But this is where the bolt locks up, and eventually it's going to get really, really dirty, and you're going to start to have it jamming. Now we're talking a lot of rounds nowadays and no maintenance. Not really a problem for a soldier, but definitely a problem with somebody who's a peasant and inexperienced with their weapon, doesn't know how to take care of it. The first M16s were issued without cleaning kits, and they were issued with badly made, very dirty ammunition. So between the two of them, in horrible conditions in Vietnam, they started to have problems. Now AK fanboys still this day think this design is still a design flaw in the gun, and that nothing has changed despite the fact that it's been, what, 40, 50 years, and we've gone through 4 different versions by then, but they'll still rant and rave that this is still a problem, and they jam all the time, and blah, 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 and it's crap. It's just spoken out of ignorance. The AR-15 has its own problems, believe me. I've got plenty of ARs and plenty of AKs. Each one's got its upsides, and each one has its downsides. But this problem has been more or less taken care of by a couple different ways. The most common way is just clean your damn gun. Clean it out, clean the crap out of it from the carbon, put some decent lubricant in there, keep your gun lubed, and you won't have the problem. That's the easiest way to take care of it. But the DI system is pretty simple. It's very inexpensive. It's just a tube, and it works just fine, and for the majority of people, it's perfectly fine. However, if you're a little more maybe concerned about it, or you don't want to deal with the issue at all, or if you run a lot of, like me, you run a lot of dirty, cheap ammunition in it, you may want to try something else, and I'll show you that. Alright, now you remember me telling you that the DI system was standard AR-15, but it was slightly uncommon. It's very uncommon. I think the AR-15 and there's one French rifle, or about the only two military rifles, that use a direct gas impingement system. Most rifles use a gas piston system, and that has been retrofitted in some cases to some ARs, and it has come as an option on some. Now this is an LWRC M6A2, and it comes factory with a gas piston system. It's kind of hard to see, and it's underneath the handguard. I don't really know if you can see it all that well. I'll try to get some light in there. As you can kind of see, it's kind of dirty on this one because I haven't shot it or I haven't cleaned it in a while. Well, hard to see, but you maybe get a look in there. I take this handguard off, but I've got so much stuff on it, it's kind of a pain in the butt to get to. There you go, get a better look at it. Right back there. See the springs, and basically it just uses a big rod, and it's similar to the DI system in the way it works. It still goes back into the chamber and pushes the carrier back, but instead of it blowing back gas, the gas stops up here and it blows on the spring and a cup and a big rod. It's kind of like push rods on an old V8 motor, and it smacks a striker plate on the bolt carrier, and I'll show you what that looks like so you get an idea. Now, as you can see on this bolt, it doesn't have that gas key setup system. It just has the striker up here, which is where the piston hits it and pushes it back. Other than that, it works the same way. The reason I'm going into this detail, because this is kind of how an AR-15 works versus a buyer's guide, is that this is an important step in making your decision of what kind of gun do you want. Piston guns are getting really popular, more or less for that whole well, for people who think the AR-15 jams. They're kind of in vogue right now, and it's just for a variety of different reasons, but they're getting real popular. There's retrofit kits, so if you buy a DI gun, you can make it a gas piston gun without any problems. Now, there were rumors and issues early on about problems with the piston guns with something called carrier tilt, where the back end of the carrier back here would rub up and down inside the buffer tube and cause problems. But if you see these slats cut in the back of it, and there's some metal skids they've got inside of it, they fixed that problem. So DI fanboys will still say that's a big problem. It's already been addressed. It was an easy thing to fix. It's been taken care of on any of the good ones, or any of the well-built piston guns. So that is something you'll need to consider when you're deciding which kind of AR you want, which is why I went into a little more detail than I had intended to. But it is something important. So you'll have to decide if you want to go with them. For most people, the DI gun will work just fine. That being said, however, there's no disadvantages to a piston system. Some people will say that it's going to be less accurate than the standard DI rifle, and I don't know, really sure about that. In 3-gun competitions, a lot of people use piston ARs, a lot of people use standard ARs. So, I'm not really sure. I haven't heard any definitive yet. There's reasons why piston guns are inaccurate by themselves, but generally, when they start comparing them, they're comparing like an M14 to an M16. It's not the same design. You can't really get a good... Sorry about that, camera died. But anyway, I was saying, you can't really go between the accuracy of the two. Really, it's going to be cost. And if you really want the hassle of changing it out, or if you want to spend more money and get the piston system, that's up to you, but I wanted to include it because it is considered now a major part of buying an AR-15 rifle, is for you to decide which kind of setup you want to get. The next most thing you're going to be looking at is the length. And as I said before, the one on the top is a rifle, the one on the bottom is a carbine. There's a mid-length, which I don't have here, and there's rifle. It's like a 16, I think 18 and 20-inch ones. This is really going to depend on a lot of factors. How wieldy and unwieldy you can deal with the rifle, how accurate you want the rifle, how heavy you want the rifle. These are things you're going to have to take into consideration. The longer the barrel, the more accurate it's going to be, the more heavy it's going to be. So that's a decision you're going to have to make. They've got them all in between sizes, but generally most people do one or the other. They usually go for the 16 or they go for the 20. The mid-lengths aren't as common, but you'll see them out there. Another issue used to be, if you see the top rifle where the front sight block is, there was a style of AR-15 called a dissipator, which was basically a 16-inch, if I remember right, barrel they had the front sight base moved forward. And the idea was to give you just as long a sight radius on the shorter barrel and make the gun more accurate. Now, since high-powered optics came out, it's pretty much gone away. You can still see a lot of dissipators out there, but you'll see if you see something called a dissipator, that's what it is. I think they look kind of cool. It's nice to have like just a short, stubby barrel past the front sight block. So I like the way they look, but as far as improving accuracy nowadays, I don't think it's really a big deal. But they are out there. So if you see one, that's what they're talking about. Okay, so let's say you figured out what length rifle you want, what style you want, and you've decided if you want to go DI or gas piston. So you've got all that settled. The next thing you're going to consider, especially with those last two, is what kind of handguards you're going to want. Now, the one above me has standard A2 handguards. The one below it has a Daniel Defense Omega rail system. These are not the only two choices, but they pretty much represent the opposite ends of the spectrum. The rifle standard handguards at the top are pretty lightweight. They just keep you from burning your hands on the barrel. They're not really designed to hold anything. The Omega Daniel Defense rail at the bottom is the other way around. It's fairly heavy. I mean, they've lightened as much as they can, but it's aluminum. But it's fairly heavy, and it's designed to bolt all kinds of crap to the rifle. It's going to make the rifle heavier, but it's going to give you the ability to put more stuff on it. They're also going to be much stronger than the standard plastic handguards. There are a lot of handguards out there, and there's a lot of quality differences. So, and there's also, which one I don't have, which is a free float tube, which basically attaches to the rifle up here around where the delta ring would normally be, and is supported by that area and doesn't touch the barrel at all and gives you a more accurate rifle. Some of these rail systems are free floated as well. So you're going to have to make up your mind what you want. If you're going for a high accuracy target rifle, some type of free float system is pretty good. After that, there's lots and lots and lots of handguards made by different manufacturers in varying quality. Magpul makes a really nice polymer handguard. It's not as versatile as some of the big rail systems, but it's really light and it's inexpensive and it's really tough. Great choice, especially if you're on a budget and you want a lot of versatility. Daniel Defense is the other end. It's expensive, it's very expensive, but it's very high quality and it's very durable, and it's pretty lightweight for aluminum. And then you can go the other way. You can look at UTG and Mako systems, which are heavy. They're not as durable as they should be for that, but they're really, really cheap. And it's for some people who just want an AR-15 for the case, I don't know, the zombie apocalypse. It worked fine for them. No point in putting a lot of money into an expensive handguard. So this is something you have to consider once you figure out your barrel length and your handguard. There's Daniel Defense, there's LaRue, Samson, Midwest Industries, Knights Armament, Arms, Troy, YH, or Yankee Hill Machines. Like I said, Troy. There's a whole bunch of them out there that are free float tubes. There's a bunch of them that are non-free float, like Surefire, some of the Knights Armaments. There's just all kinds of options. That's the best thing about having an AR-15. There's tons of options and there's tons of parts you can add, and it's really up to you. And it's not like you have to spend a lot of money to get quality. You know, you can spend a decent amount of money and get a high quality part. I will cover that when I start covering stocks and handguards, but some of the stocks and handguards made by Magpul are really inexpensive, and they're extremely high quality and really tough. Same with the magazines. So that's the best thing about these rifles. You don't have to spend a lot of money if you know what you're looking for, and that's the key. You need to do your research on whatever part you want. Don't just rush into it. But the other upside to the AR-15 is the fact that it's so simple that if you buy a standard A2 like I have here, and later on you decide, I really wanted a collapsible stock. I don't like the fixed stock. Or, I really wanted, to mount an optic. I don't want to do the iron sights anymore. Or I really wanted to change the handguard. It's not a big deal. It's really easy to change. You don't have to take it to a gunsmith if you're good with just simple tools. You can easily change the parts out yourself. And you've got a lot of options. And like I'm saying, that's the best part about this rifle. And that's one of the reasons they're so popular. My best advice to you is, I spent 16 years living in Japan, and one of the things Japan is famous for is its minimalistic style. And I kind of follow along with that with everything. I like to put the least amount of crap on my rifle as I can possibly get away with. I like it to be comfortable, and I like it to be functional. But you see guys who will attach some insanely bizarre stuff to their rifles. Generally, the only thing I attach to them is a light and a vertical grip. I've seen guys put lasers on them. The IR lasers, if you got night vision, yeah, it totally makes sense. If you don't, and other than going for looks, I don't know why you would bother, but you know, whatever. But there's guys who just put ungodly amounts of stuff on. The AR-15 is designed to be a lightweight weapon. When you start bolting lots and lots and lots of crap onto it, you're taking away one of its strengths. In comparison to these two rifles, that Gewehrwerks AR-15 I got in there is extremely light. It's lighter than both of these. And it was never designed to be a lightweight weapon. It just turns out that way. And as you can see, the top AR M16A2 version I have is pretty simple. And it's still a little heavier than that AK-74. So you got to take that into consideration. Now, you can make it an AR-15 M16 much lighter than AK-74 I have. If you got, say, a 16-inch barrel like this, and put all like mad pull polymer stuff on it, it'll weigh a lot less. It'll weigh probably almost right around 5 pounds, maybe even 4 if you put a pencil barrel on it. You can go for the carbon 15 AR-15s. I wouldn't, but you can. And you'll be down to less than 4 pounds if you keep it real lightweight. So, you know, you've got to go between those two ideas. Alright, we'll go to the next thing. Alrighty, sorry about that. Battery died. Man, the first thing I'm doing when I get my student loans in is I'm going to go buy a new camera. Hate this thing. Anyway, I was talking about adjustable stocks. There are a lot of adjustable stocks. A lot of you guys have seen the EM4 adjustable stock, and there's lots of different versions that work similarly, that are actually better quality and more comfortable. This is a Veltor or Veltor stock, depending on how you pronounce it. Excellent, really lightweight, real strong, made out of polymer. I really like it. I have it on my LWRC. It's one of the two most popular stocks for carbine and rifles. This is probably the most common. This is the Magpul CTR. It has room for a cheek riser on it. This is currently being used in my AK, going back to what I said about parts being adapted to fit different rifles. This is the next most common, excellent stock, inexpensive, works great. You've got tons of options for stocks. There are stocks designed for marksman style rifles with comb height adjustment, cheek risers, all kinds of stuff. You cannot, if you can't find a stock you like that fits an AR, there is something wrong with you. There are so many choices out there for stocks. So I don't know what you're looking for. If you can't find it, just, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with you. So anyway, next thing we're going to move on to is grips. Now, the AR is probably one of the most ergonomic rifles out there. It really works for everybody, and one of the reasons why is there's lots of options for parts. This is a Magpul Miad pistol grip. It has these backings you can take on and off. Makes it fit your hand, even if you got small hands like I do. Fits your hand real well. It gives you good placement on the trigger, right-handed or left-handed. Up here, this is the standard A2 pistol grip. It will work. It's more comfortable than the standard AK handguards by far. But if you notice where I'm doing this left-handed, but it works on right-handed. You can kind of see, if I put my hand through the trigger, it doesn't fit on the tip of my finger. It fits around about where the knuckle is. You kind of have to position your hand a little differently when using it. It's not the most comfortable thing. It works, and you can live with it. I've seen guys just put a piece of foam back here and wrap electrical tape over it to thicken it up a little bit so it would fit their hands better. But that's the thing is, this comes in a standard parts kit. It costs nothing, and there's just a bolt that holds it in here, and you can change it, and there's tons of choices. Ergo grips, Hogue grips, which are very comfortable. I mean, there is just tons and tons and tons of choices for grips. It's the same with the stock. If you can't find a grip you like on here, there's something wrong with you. Now, as I stated in another video, a problem with these designs can be the magazine. Now, it doesn't have to be a problem. Some people just have badly designed or worn out or old magazines. But the thing is, you can find a Vietnam era magazine that's been through hell, pull the spring, the follower out, stick a Magpul spring and follower in it, and it'll work perfectly. There's lots and lots of choices. If you want to see all the different AR magazines, just a few of them. I had made an earlier video comparing AR mags. There's tons of them out there. This is very popular. This is the Magpul 30 round. Newer ones have a little window here so you can see it's covered. It's clear plastic, but you can see how many bullets you have. And up here is a standard GI steel or aluminum mag. Both come in steel and aluminum. Both of them come in black and gray. It's also very fine. They're both really lightweight. They both feed just fine. They're both completely interchangeable, and there's lots of other choices. Go watch my video if you want to see what else is out there. There's tons of options. Alrighty, moving right along here. We've covered the mags, and since we're heading that direction, this is going to depend a lot on the manufacturer, and well, if you're building the rifle yourself, this is a lower receiver. This is basically this is what the U.S. government considers the rifle. The two receivers you see here are the most standard, common receivers. Basically any lower receiver will work in an AR-15, and new receivers pretty much look like this with some minor modifications. Sometimes they have cuts in them for custom bolt release, ambidextrous safeties, whatever. But these are what you're going to run across the most. Now, if you want to make I think they call them retro rifles, and you want a rifle look like one that was straight out of the first generation with this kind of stock on it, or even earlier M16, you'll want to look at the retro lowers that don't have this fencing around them. This is basically designed so you couldn't accidentally hit the magazine, and they won't have the brass deflector up here, and some of the real early ones won't even have this forward assist. That's something to take into consideration. I wouldn't recommend it as a combat rifle or defense rifle, because these improvements are improvements for a reason. So you'd want them unless you're building, like I said, a retro, just for looks kind of rifle. It'll still work fine, but if you want something for personal defense or personal offense, you want one of the newer receivers. That being said, now you'll have a good close look up at the different style uppers. They're interchangeable. I could take the tops off, but you'll see what the big difference is with the built-in carry handle and the rail system built in the top here. Otherwise, they're identical and they're completely interchangeable. This is the complex sight. I might do a whole video on how the A2 sight works, but this was designed by the Army Marksmanship. What's it called? Army Marksmanship something, to basically improve the sights for the M16. It's a very complicated sight as far as being able to sight in and precision, but it's excellent iron sights.